Biden made his first public appearance Friday since a number of women accused him of touching them in a way that made them uncomfortable. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe reports.
I'm sorry I didn't understand more. I'm not sorry for any of my intentions.
Seen publicly for the first time since accusations of inappropriate behavior, former Vice President Joe Biden today issued a partial apology.
I've never been disrespectful intentionally to a man or a woman.
But in a hotel ballroom packed overwhelmingly with middle-aged men, he made light of his recent troubles, not once.
I just want you to know I had permission to hug Lonnie.
But twice.
By the way, he gave me permission to touch him.
At least 8 women in the past week have accused Biden of invading their personal space. His first accuser, Lucy Flores, tweeted that Biden's quips show he hasn't reflected at all on how his actions have made some women uncomfortable. Biden's remarks to members of an electrical workers union focused mostly on the economy, and he directly targeted President Trump.
This country can't afford 4 more years of a president lacked in the past and grudges. We've got to get moving.
Moments after Biden finished, Mr. Trump tweeted that he's employed thousands of electrical workers through the years who will support him in 2020. And he dwelled on Biden's troubles before departing for a trip to California.
He's going through a situation. Let's see what happens.
Today, Biden all but said he's in. But he isn't expected to officially join the presidential race until later this month, at the earliest.
What's the holdup?
What's the holdup? Putting everything together, man. Putting everything together.
Whenever he gets in, he'll be joining a field on course to top 20 candidates, a record size. 17 Democrats already in or at the exploratory stage, with Biden and at least 7 others still considering a run.
Ed O'Keefe joins us now from Washington. Ed, good to see you. I want to ask you first to start. You mentioned this in your piece. Joe Biden joked about his behavior in touching people not once, but twice during this event today. What do you make of that?
Well, you know, consider the audience he was facing. It was a meeting of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, overwhelmingly male and middle-aged audience. And that first time he joked about it after hugging the union president went over quite well. It was when he called the kids up that I think a lot of people in the room kind of thought that was a little awkward. He had seen them in the crowd. He invited them on stage. He shook all their hands and extended his hand. He didn't really touch them. And then pulled in the tallest boy there and said he gave me permission. But it didn't appear that he actually had. So either way, it was a little odd. And was asked about this afterward by reporters and said, oh, gosh, you know, I didn't mean to offend anyone. But you got to wonder, how many times is he going to potentially joke about this or make light of it and have to turn around and apologize again? And I think that's part of the struggle for him right now, is just acknowledging that there is a segment of his party, a segment of society that doesn't think this is funny. And if the first joke was an attempt to sort of acknowledge it and move on, great. But the second one may have blown that shot.
What else stood out to you during his question and answer session after with reporters?
Well, you know, he certainly sounded like a presidential candidate and winked, nodded, and nudged and said he's basically there, but that federal election law is prohibiting him from even saying that he's about to do it. There's a very complex legal process that has to be followed where he essentially tells his team, I'm going to do it. They have a certain window in which to actually launch the campaign, and then he'll launch it. It's not that different than what Jeb Bush was suffering from 4 years ago when he was traveling the country as an unannounced candidate for more than 6 months, basically trying to convince people he wasn't running for president when we all knew he was. And that's essentially what Biden's doing. Notably, he said that he sort of wants to let every other Democrat get in the race first and then go last. The problem is there's going to be more than 20 people in this race, and we don't quite know when that list will end. So he at some point here this spring probably has to jump in, but he doesn't seem to mind waiting.
And sort of backing up back to his behavior, as you know, he hasn't fully apologized to any of his accusers. We've heard sort of this sorry, I'm not sorry sort of remarks. Is there a strategy behind this?
It's unclear, but we do know that there was some conversation with him and his team over the last week about sort of how far to go and whether to even say anything at all on camera. Ultimately, he did, acknowledging that there was concern from some about how he'd behave. But as he said today, he's not apologizing for his behavior. You've seen in the last few days, especially people who have met him, who've worked with him, who know him, come forward with their own versions of events and saying, look, when I was in need, when I needed comforting or reassurance, he provided it, both in his words and, yeah, in the hugs or the back slaps or the neck rubs he gave me. That isn't necessarily the debate he wants to be launching his soon-to-be campaign with, but I think his team is certainly hoping that all of this can be pushed aside and forgotten about by the time he makes it official.
The former vice president has said that he'll be, quote, more mindful and respectful of people's personal space, but some of his accusers are saying he's really missing the point here. Why are they still dissatisfied? Because
they saw how he reacted today in that room. The fact that he made light of it twice, would having made light of it at all been unacceptable? Hard to know. But I think what they're trying to say to him is, look, if you thought this was over, it's not, because of the way you behaved on Friday in sort of making light of this and not perhaps being more explicit and acknowledging it. And I suspect soon, Kenneth, we're going to hear that there are some people saying, look, you're in a room full of men. What better place to talk about this change in behavior and this societal development than with a bunch of men who are the kind of people who are causing this discomfort for women. But he didn't do it, and instead focused on economic matters and tried to, I think, sketch out where he might be headed once or if he ever launches that campaign.
All right, we'll leave it there. Ed O'Keefe in Washington. Ed, good to see you, and thank you.
Take care.